Welcome to the first for today, November the 11th, 2022. I am Ryan Balaji. Good to have you here with us. We are presented by our friends at French Lick Resort in French Lick, Indiana. We have a couple stories for you today, as the name of the show implies. Of course, we skipped yesterday's show because we did the prior day's show kind of late, so I didn't want to kind of hammer it twice. And we had some things obviously going on in life. So it all kind of worked itself out. But anyway, on today's show, we have two topics for you. We have one LIV Golf related. We have one, I guess I would say, Tiger related. And we'll get into both of those. So first story for today is the rumor roundup around LIV. And there have been some rumors out there in the market. And there have been a number of outlets that have run with them. National Club Golfer is one of the ones that love to run LIV rumor stories. I mean, I haven't been right about pretty much any of them, to be fair. They've been off about all of them, but they love running them because that means they get clicks and that they're a click farm at this point. But that all to say, there have been some kind of rumors coming around from the team championship finale from, 2 weeks ago now. And there were a number of them out there. Then one of them was that Xander Schauffele and Patrick Cantlay were among the next golfers to move to LIV. And that has pretty well been shot down, I think, at this point. Brian Wacker, who works at the New York Post, and worked for the PGA Tour, worked for Golf Digest, said that he has talked to enough people to kind of, and so is Noah Langott, by the way, they've also talked about this, to be pretty certain that Xander Schauffele's not going anywhere. And they also are pretty certain that Patrick Cantlay's not going anywhere, but apparently Cantlay had some discussion with, or maybe a dinner with Phil Mickelson, so I guess there's maybe a little bit more cast doubt or something like that, but it doesn't sound like Cantlay's necessarily going anywhere. But I think people are trying to put together the pieces of Greg Norman saying that they are targeting having 7 more players added before their next event, which will be next February. And there was some intrigue there in that a PGA Tour venue, Mayakoba, which their golf course El Chameleon is designed by Greg Norman, will host a LIV event next year. That kind of makes sense. Greg Norman design. They have a relationship with him. It is a good place, I guess, to bring in kind of VIP types. It's a very nice resort. So even if you don't get any crowds, which you would basically not expect for this event, because they don't really come to the PGA Tour event either. It's a resort where people go to drink and go on their honeymoon. I went to Riviera Maya, too far from Playa del Carmen, and they're not there to watch golf. Maybe to play one round of golf, but you're really there to get drunk and, swim, enjoy the beach. So that would kind of make sense as a venue. So that sounds like that's going to happen, putting the future of the Worldwide Technology Championship, at least at Mayakoba, in doubt. That could continue as someplace else in Mexico, perhaps. But TBD on that, of course. But all of this rumor stuff has kind of come along, and so most of it's largely been shot down. I saw one yesterday about Tyrrell Hatton potentially joining LIV. A number of people that I've talked to, all their sources say there's really nothing to that. I guess we'll see. The intrigue, I think, is that there's always a lot of rumors around right now, and there have been for the last year, of course, and a number of them turn out to be true. But I feel like you have to kind of pick and choose who you trust, and a number of people have proven themselves to be untrustworthy in this subject. So when you hear from certain sources, maybe unverified ones or ones that are pushing an agenda, that so-and-so is going to LIV or whatever, I really don't see the value of it. I don't see the point in it other than to maybe drum up conversation to keep LIV in the news. And then it doesn't happen. You go, oh, it was just a rumor. So maybe it's just to kind of keep the conversation going. And maybe there's some truth to it. I really don't know. But the people that I trust have told me that these things are not accurate. The one thing that did come up that does interest me is a potential change at the top. And this is a rumor that's been going around since July, by the way, around the Open Championship. And I think I first heard this maybe from Global Golf Post, an article done around the Open Championship, that Mark King, and Mark King is the former CEO of TaylorMade and the former CEO of Adidas North America, and the current head man of Taco Bell, that would be coming to become the CEO of LIV. And so there's some smoke to it, maybe in part because of this July article, and also in part because there were conversations, perhaps, between Norman and King and the Saudis. And King attended at least the Portland event and played in the Pro-Am. and that probably started a conversation. I think he has been to some LIV events just in an individual capacity, maybe scouting the product. He seems to be a fan of the product. He has been quoted as saying that he believes within 5 years LIV will be a normalized tour that will just kind of interact in the golf ecosystem like any other tour. So he seems to appreciate the concept. He seems to be in favor of it, at least in some fashion. But Eamon Lynch from Golf Week reported yesterday, I believe, from a text message from a friend in the industry, that King said he likes LIV and he played in the Pro-Am, but he's not going to be their next CEO. Now, of course, can money change his tune? Probably. Could other opportunities change his tune? Yeah, it could. But the LIV folks have also pushed back and said, no, Greg Norman is our CEO. He will continue to be. So read into that what you would like. But it is an interesting conversation piece of who should lead LIV, at least ostensibly, as the CEO moving forward. And I kind of coming down on one side of this. I had a conversation on Twitter, I guess, last month with Kevin Moore from down at UGA and Blueprint Golf. And he kind of pitched this as Greg Norman is a distraction, and he's an intentional distraction to try to keep LIV in the news for one, maybe be a player recruiter for two, but largely to kind of be the front man as a distraction so that the Saudis who are really running this thing can go do whatever they need to do business-wise, whether that's recruit more players, whether that's set up a TV deal, sign agreements with clubs to host stuff, all those types of things that have to go into ultimately trying to make LIV a viable business, not just a waste of money. And so I said in the return that Norman wouldn't take this job, in my view, were it not, if he were just a figurehead, if he didn't have some kind of operational capacity, if he were just kind of there to be there and be a provocateur, I don't think he would do that. And Kevin and I kind of went back and forth on that topic, and then when the Mark King news comes up, because he kind of believed that maybe he was more right on the subject, and perhaps that's true. I'm not entirely sure. We're arguing different points, very different points, but my belief is that Norman has some legitimate decision-making that goes in here. Does that mean he's in the boardroom trying to discuss certain things related to TV partners or things like that? I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't know the ins and outs of LIV, but I don't think Norman's just there to be there. I don't think he's just there to be a pretty face and kind of rile up Jay Monahan. I mean, he does that, but I think he has some operational capacity here. Maybe he is not so much a CEO as a COO, at least from the tour operation standpoint. I mean, he kind of understands what it's like to operate golf tournaments. He's got the Shark Shootout. He's done other stuff over the years. He's obviously been a tour player for a very long time. He knows what goes into making a tournament. So maybe that's really where his bread and butter is, along with player recruitment, and then the Saudis kind of do the rest. The suggestion would be that if they brought in Mark King to be the CEO, and maybe you elevated Norman to chairman, which then is definitely more a figurehead position, you would have someone who would be a true executive officer, not an operational guy, but an executive officer, a guy with leadership and forethought, who has taken some companies to big levels. Now, you could also put asterisks around that, around TaylorMade. At one point was launching, 8 drivers a year and just kind of flooding the market with product. There were accusations back in the day that TaylorMade wasn't being the most honest in terms of their accounting practices and how they put forward whether they were having equipment sales and whether they were selling it to retailers and then bringing it back, or however all that worked. There's a lot of accusations that flew around back in the day. Then he went to Adidas after the TaylorMade spinoff, went into that world for a few years, and then went to Taco Bell, where I don't remember when he started that job, but he's been around probably since the breakfast era started for Taco Bell. So I don't understand the impetus to necessarily leave, although he could get back in the golf world. He has kind of already. He has joined the board of a company called Golf Forever. They make golf fitness products as well as kind of software, video, and teaching around golf fitness and golf stretching and getting your body ready to play. So that would be an interesting twist to this if he joined that board and then became the CEO of LIV, how that relationship would suddenly work. I don't know the answer to that, of course, but that would be an interesting twist. Let's put it that way. Do I think Mark King is necessarily going to be the next CEO? I don't know. I don't know whether to finally take LIV at face value that Norman is their CEO and it's going to be that way moving forward. But I do agree with Kevin Moore's point that they would probably consider making a change if they felt like Norman was ineffective and that they weren't getting anywhere as fast as they needed to. I think you could argue they haven't gotten anywhere as fast as they needed to. They have certainly acquired players. That's hard not to do with the kind of money that they're playing with. However, what they have struggled to do is find investors for their concept, their team concept, and maybe that's in the offing. They have not identified a television deal yet. There is some suggestion that the Fox situation is still probably going to be it, where they either buy time or get very little in terms of a payment structure from them. And then whoever is ultimately the CEO of this has to figure out how this thing makes money. And if they can't justify this as a business between the franchises, TV deals, merch, gate, all that stuff, if you can't make it work, this thing shuts down quick. And Eamon Lynch has reported, I think he did a column yesterday, so I'm going to say it was through that there have been some rumblings among LIV players who are unhappy that they don't have world ranking points, that they're not really winding up playing less given the new LIV season is basically going to have them play every week for 30 weeks, so that talking point is long gone. They're not really in a position to have a TV deal at this point, whether they don't really have much viewership. So if you're a player, you're wondering, yeah, I got the money, but what are the other things that I'm not seeing that I was kind of promised or assured would happen at multiple different points? So there is some rumbling there. And then also Eamon said that there appears to be some other rumbling that maybe the Saudis above the folks who are running this operation, particularly MBS, might be starting to think about calling in the folks involved to figure out how this thing makes money. And that doesn't mean LIV's going to go away in 6 months. I'm not trying to argue that whatsoever. I don't know the answer to that, nor am I going to pretend to know that. But if they do make a change with King, that seems to send the signal to me that they're not happy with what they have accomplished with Norman at the helm, obviously, and that they haven't gotten far enough, fast enough to justify the long-term concept here. If they keep him, if they keep Norman in this role, and don't make him chairman or something like that, then maybe they seem to believe that it's really out of his hands, effectively, and that bringing in another CEO isn't necessarily going to change the operations day-to-day, which seem to be fluid and fine. But the bigger punch list items in terms of making this thing a legitimate business, which are really kind of come down to the hands of the Golf Saudi community. Can they do it? And if they can't do it, does this thing die on the vine pretty quickly? We will see. There's still a lot to come, but all of that rumor world out there about LIV is very much active, very hard to discern what's true and what's not, what will be and what won't be. So I guess more or less stay tuned, but all of that to say, things could be happening, things might not be happening. All right, our second story for today is Tiger Woods. And Tiger Woods apparently won the PIP, the Player Impact Program, for this past year. And Rory McIlroy mentioned that. I forget the outlet where he mentioned it, so I'm sorry for not knowing that. But he did say that Tiger won the Player Impact Program for this year. Now, Phil said about this time a year ago, more or less, that he had won the PIP. And that things around, his tweets around the match and some tweeting that he did questioning maybe vaccine requirements might have gotten him over the top. Don't know about that. But ultimately he didn't. Tiger won the PIP, and Tiger won it again this year, apparently, according to Rory. That's not necessarily a done deal yet, but I don't think Rory's the kind of guy to speak out of school, so he's probably, at least as it relates to these items, so he's probably right. Tiger probably won the PIP. Now, that means an infusion of cash to a guy who played, 3 events this year, and he didn't finish but one of them. So he played the Masters, obviously made the cut there, was a big story, huge draw, didn't play well on the weekend, was gassed. He made the cut of the PGA Championship, then shot, 79 in the third round, withdrew after that. Poor conditions, poor play, everything hurt, but he got through to the weekend. The Open Championship, 78-75, didn't get through it at the old course, said what probably is his material farewell to the Open at St. Andrews, and then, hasn't really been seen since. He's going to play in the Hero World Challenge in December. That's an official event, at least sanctioned by the PGA Tour, but what's called a challenge event. So it doesn't give FedEx Cup points. Does give world ranking points, by the way. It does. And that will be dramatically affected, by the way, because of the new system, because there are only 20 players in the field. Tiger being one of 20. The other 2 additions he announced were Kevin Kisner and Tommy Fleetwood. So they're going to have 20 players in the field, but it's no longer just straight up worth what you bring to the table as your current world ranking. It's your world ranking strokes gained. And so the more players that you have, the better rates. And that's the way the new formula works. That's obviously not the case with the 20-player field. We saw the degradation of points with the Tour Championship going down from, like 64 points or something like that to the winner to basically half that this year because of the new system. So I think you would expect to see something similar with the Hero World Challenge. That all said, Tiger's playing, and he's going to be a part of it. It's collecting the money. Then, the next week, under the lights at Pelican Golf Club, which is where they're playing the LPGA event this week in Bella, Florida, in the Tampa area, they're going to play under the lights in the next iteration of the match. So Tiger and Rory McIlroy are going to team up to take on Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth. Should be a lot of fun. Going to generate a lot of money for them, but also it's going to generate a lot of donations for different charities, different charitable endeavors. And I don't know if he's going to play the PNC Challenge, the father's or championship, the father-son event, or really it's just parent-child or special relationship event. I mean, it's kind of morphed over the years, but it could be a whole bunch of different things. But I don't know if Tiger's going to play with Charlie Woods. I assume they will because it has been really fun to watch the last couple of years, and Charlie Woods seems to love that event. But you're going to see Tiger a couple times, at least twice in December, maybe 3 times, and then we probably won't see him again until, at best, Genesis. And if you see him at Genesis, he might play, might not. Obviously, he's the host, and it's a $20 million tournament now going into next year, so that could be a good incentive to play. Not that he needs the money, but it could be a good incentive to play. We'll see if that happens. All that to say, Tiger's clearly a part-time guy. He clearly is not going to play a whole lot of professional golf in the course of calendar years moving forward unless something miraculous happens to his body. And even then, probably he's going to be more or less a Ben Hogan kind of guy. Plays the majors, 1 or 2 events, calls it a day. Maybe 3 or 4 if he's feeling particularly healthy. Can that guy continue to win the Player Impact Program? And I believe the way that it's structured moving forward is going to be no. I don't think that the PGA Tour is going to let any player more or less not meet the guidelines of what all the top players agree to, which is to play in every elevated event if they are eligible, except for one. And then meeting those requirements, you are able to qualify for the PIP, which means Tiger's not going to win the PIP in 2023. It's going to be somebody else. And I think that frees up a whole lot of money for a bunch of players through this program because the PIP has exploded in value, right? So in addition to all the purse money, you've got the FedEx Cup, you've got the majors, you've got $25 million for the players, you've got the PIP money. Now all of a sudden you've got that freed up too. So that Tiger's kind of giving these guys more money. I mean, we talk about it all the time over the years that Tiger is tremendously responsible for a lot of the growth of purses of golf over the duration of his career. And to a degree, that is about as true as stated, but also it's relevant to the rise of sports rights in terms of how those have increased largely across the board, and the demographics of the golf audience make it very appealing to increase those rights fees, and those have come back into golf. We've seen that even recently, and that's happened over the course of Woods' career. So it's been some Tiger, but it's also been just kind of anybody would have done it if they were even remotely popular. So maybe a little bit overstated, but not too overstated, Tiger's impact on the economics of the game at the professional level. But he's still continuing to kind of clear the way for guys to make more money. He helped architect this whole thing. Got off the plane in the Philadelphia area, went and met the players who, 20, 25 guys who got together at the BMW Championship. They architected this elevated series of events, these changes, and that he has set up the next generation of the PGA Tour. This is his kind of next legacy play, is to set up what the PGA Tour is going to look like in the future, largely to try to compete with LIV, but this isn't going to go away if LIV goes away. This is still going to be the future structure of the PGA Tour, and it has changed significantly because of Tiger Woods being at the helm for it. So, yeah, I mean, maybe this is a payoff on thanks for kind of getting involved, Tiger, and then it'll go away for next year. But for him to have won the PIP twice, barely playing any golf, I think tells you a whole lot about where Tiger Woods stands in the history of golf, in terms of golf popularity relative to current players. And I know there is some exhaustion about Tiger Woods. It has been there since the car crash 13, 14 years ago. And I understand all of that, but when Tiger plays golf, or Tiger even thinks about playing golf, people watch. People are interested. We don't quite have that star power otherwise in the game today, and so yeah, maybe one more payout for Tiger Woods makes sense, but we won't see that moving forward in the Player Impact Program. All right, that's going to do it for us today on 2 Off the First. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the show. You can subscribe to us either on YouTube or your favorite podcasting service. You can listen to us on Golf Newsnet Radio, which is available on TuneIn and on our website, golfnewsnet.com. We'll be back tomorrow for another show on Saturday. I am actually a bachelor this weekend with my family out of town, having some fun on their own as well. So we will have a Saturday show for you, and looking forward to talking to you then. Thanks, everybody. See you then.